right, so we're going to be looking at putting a skeleton in this character. So when you first open up the ball character, it was a mistake on my part in uploading it. Unless you already fixed this, make sure you go to show, say all, because I have joints and IK handles hidden, so we're going to do that real fast. What I want to do in here is I'm going to come in and I'm going to put in some legs or some skeletal joints in here. And I'm going to change my set menu to rigging so that I can have access to the proper menus up at the top. I also want to make a shelf that would make it easier for me to access some things. So I'm going to go to my little gear over here and say new shelf, and I'm going to call this rigging because there's already a shelf up here called rigging, so I'll just call it rigging so I can have a unique name. All right, and then I'm going to start adding some things to my shelf here. So I'm going to go to skeleton and hold Control Shift and then click on Create Joints. All right, so I have my joint tool right there. All right, so when you use your joint tool, by default, it's going to snap itself to the grid. And if you hit backspace on your keyboard, that'll also erase your joints. Even if I don't have a grid visible, if I click like up here, it's still going to place it flat to extended on that grid. So what I want to be able to do though is place these joints inside of the character, but yep, that's what it does when you put it in the perspective view. I'm gonna hit backspace again a couple times just so I can get rid of those joints. I'm gonna go to my side view so I can get a better look at this. And I want to be placing a hip, knee, ankle, and a ball, or rather a flex part of the toe joint and a toe tip. So I'm just going to click inside of here. If you hold down left click and drag, it'll allow you to move it a little bit more. There you go, and I'll click again in the knee. I'm going to hold shift so it'll go perfectly straight, and then click into the ankle, and then I will click over here to the ball, and I'm going to hold shift and go out to the toe. Right around there. I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard to complete that chain. If I tap spacebar though, it's going to be in the center of my character. So I'll use my move tool and just go to my front view over here and move that to this leg over here. And I'm only going to be working on one leg. I'm also going to go to my move or my joint tool, either here or my last tool used, and just click in the center of my sphere and then hit enter so I can have my hips joint. And I'll make sure it's aligned there, and it looks like it is. Perfect. Now, at a certain point, you're going to need to name your joints. And I'll do that now. I'll just call this pelvis. All right. And then I'm going to go to joint 1 and we'll call this left hip. I'm going to hit my down arrow, which is called pick walking, and I will call this left knee, and it's just going to go down the chain when I hit down. It doesn't work as well when you go up though. When I go up, it will work decently. Some things it doesn't work as well, and it's going to get confusing once the chain deviates, but it should work fine for here. So I'll hit left ankle, left ball, and then left toe. So once you have a chain created, the next thing you need to do is you need to actually orient these joints. Okay, the orientation or the rotation rather needs to be equal from joint to joint. So notice right here, this is green going this way, green and blue and red. And then when I get to the ankle, the top color is blue, meaning these are not oriented to each other from here to here. And they should have the same rotation from joint to joint. I mean, you could very well come in here, rotate it manually yourself and make it fit, but you'd want to unparent it by going here and holding Shift P to unparent, and then select the joint itself and then hit Shift P to unparent, and then manually rotate it so that it would match, and then do a modify freeze transformations. I like to put this on my shelf though, so I'll do modify, Control Shift click, put that on my shelf. This is just not the best way. It's the best way technically, but it's not the most efficient way of doing it, because we can actually come up here and select our root joint, okay, or our left hip, and go to skeleton, orient joint, but let's always go to the option box, and I'll hold Control and Shift and click on the option box to add that to my shelf. And what the settings that I usually use are primary axis X, secondary axis Y. Secondary axis world orientation is set to Z. And if you want to see this entire chain, I'm going to go to select with this selected, hierarchy and also put this on my shelf so that when I click, it'll select every single joint in the chain, because please note that by default, even though this looks like it has everything selected, it is only selecting that top joint. But when I select hierarchy, it'll select the entire chain. So then I will hit toggle local axis visibility. And then you can get a little bit better idea. You see how Y is going that way, Y is going that way. But in this case, it's not, Z is going the opposite direction of everything else, okay? But if I click on the root joint and then hit apply, now everything is going in the same direction. So as long as X is consistently going down through the bones, it's fine. And you might notice that the end joint did not get oriented, and that's called a leaf, like a tree leaf joint. And those don't necessarily have to be oriented, okay? Because they do not get skinned or do not actually control anything on our character. So once that's done, I will come in here and say hierarchy and then toggle local axis and then close this window. So this leg is now oriented and done, and I can go to skeleton, mirror joints to get the other chain. So I'll go to this option box here. And to know which direction you need to mirror it in, you just need to look in this left-hand corner where it says YZ, and that's the mirror across. And then I will search for left, replace with right, and then hit mirror. Okay, note that I only had the top chain or the top one selected when I did that. Okay, and then we just need to complete this skeleton by connecting the legs to the body. So I'll do that by going to selecting my left hip, and I'll hold control in my outliner and then click on the pelvis and then hit P as in parent on my keyboard. Or I can select the hip here and then hold shift and select the pelvis and then hit P on my keyboard. And now I have a completed joint chain that is working. It looks pretty good. The last thing I'll do is do a select hierarchy and freeze transformations overall to make sure everything is good. I'm also going to select all of my geometry and go to select hierarchy so I can select all the individual pieces and go to edit, delete by type history. I popped that on my shelf really quickly. This is the last time you're going to want to delete history because what we're going to do from here on out is we're going to skin the character, and once you have a skin attached to a skeleton, you don't want to delete history. So to skin your character, and again, I mentioned this in class, but this is the point at which you can do this now before you rig or before you add controls or after you add controls. It doesn't really matter when you do it, as long as you do it at some point. Usually it's more dangerous to do it before you add controls to your character because there's a lot of problems that could happen. So I'd recommend that you save your scene now so that you can have a just a save scene somewhere of your work, okay? And also, before I get too far, I always forget to do this, I want to make sure that before I start adding controls into the legs or these IK handles, that I actually make sure I set preferred angle, because I need to tell Maya that this is the direction I want the knees to bend. So I'm just going to rotate the knee a little bit backwards and go to skeleton, set preferred angle, and then set this back to 0. And I'll do the same thing to the other knee. Skeleton, set preferred angle, set back to 0. Okay. So I can either again do controls or I can skin. I showed you in class what it looks like to skin first, so I'll do controls first. And in Canvas, I have a Rig 101 wire controller script for you to download. So I'm going to go ahead and download that really quickly and show you how to set it up. All right, so I have that downloaded, and it's a MEL script, which is a Maya expression language, which is what is specific for Maya, clearly. How you get it in here is, first off, you need to go and grab it from your downloads directory. So it's right there, and I'm going to go to my documents Maya folder and then go to believe I have to go to projects. Nope, it's not projects. It is going to be 2018 scripts. Okay, so you want to go to Maya 2018 scripts and then paste it in there. Okay, note that this is specifically going to be in the 2018 version of Maya, because if you go to Maya, there's actually a scripts folder in here as well, which would put it for everything. So you could paste it in there if you copied it, and it should be in both locations. So once it's in those locations, I'm going to go to the bottom right-hand corner to the script editor. You'll also find it under Windows, General Editors, Script Editor, right here. And it looks like this. So this is a editor which will actually record up here. You'll see everything you've done in Maya up until this point, but down here at the bottom is where you could actually enter scripting information, and it has both Mel and Python scripts. So I want to make sure I'm in Mel, and then I'm going to go to File, Open Script. And it should go straight to that scripts folder, and you should see Rig 101 wire controllers, and that's what you want to open. If it doesn't go there, make sure you navigate to the folder that you have that script in, and then hit open. So once the script is opened, it's just waiting to be executed. Okay, so I'm going to go to Command Execute to actually load the script into Maya. Okay, should have actually, I'm going to hit Control A and then do Command Execute. Okay, because it didn't seem like it actually got executed, but we'll see what happens. So there we go. Okay, I'm making sure I was still recording. Sorry, I had to minimize the window because I couldn't see. There we go. So now that it's been executed, it's now loaded in Maya, but it's technically not available to use until you actually come here to the bottom left-hand corner, and let me make this smaller. There we go. And you type in the name of the script. And what I usually do is come up in here and just copy the name of the script literally from Windows Explorer, and then I paste it in this bottom window here. So I'll hit Control V and then hit Enter. And now it will open the Rig 101 wire controller script. Okay. But what if you close it? How do you get it back? You got to type it in again in here. Or I can hit Control, first I'm going to type Control V, and then I'm going to highlight the name of the script. And if you hold down the middle mouse button, oops, hold down middle mouse and drag to your shelf and drop, it'll ask how you want to save this script. I'll just say as a Mel script. So that instead of having to always keep typing that in, I can just click on this button and it'll open up my wire controllers. So since it's kind of, I don't know what that icon means all the time, I can come over here to my shelf editor, which is that little gear, and go to the shelf editor, and then find the shelf that you're on, and then the actual option that's on the shelf, and you can actually give it a label, and I usually call it Rig 101. And then hit save, so that now I know what that is. So I can click on it, and all this has is just a variety of NURBS curves for you to use, instead of having to go to create NURBS primitives circle, which will look like that, to represent a controller for your character. So I usually like to go to the char or character, and they have a little footprint that I can drag over here and put around the character's foot, just like that. Okay, and I only do one leg at a time, but if you wanted to, just for now, you can duplicate this and just move it to the other side. Something like that, and just kind of get it over. And then I also select both my controls, freeze transformations and delete history. And you want to make sure that you name them. So this will be left foot control, and this will be right foot control. And while we're at it, I'm going to make one for my hips, and you can do a couple things for that. I'm going to go to flat shapes, and let's just make it a circle. So I'll bring this up here, make it a little bit bigger, sitting outside. This controller here, I'm holding down V as in violin, and I'm holding the middle mouse button, which will allow me to snap as I drag, point snap specifically, to the joint, so it'll be centered there. And then again, I'm going to freeze transformations and delete history, and I'm going to call this hips controller, or hips control. Okay, so now I have a controller for my hips and for my 2 feet. Okay, I could also, I'll probably also want to make some for the knees to figure out how I want the knees to point. So I could come, I like using prisms for this. There's a pyramid, it looks like that. And I'll just rotate it this way and scale it down. And again, I'm gonna hold down V as in violin, making sure this is selected, and then middle, mouse and drag over here, and then I'll just move it in front of the knee. Duplicate this, and then move it in front of the knee. Select them both, freeze transformations, and delete history. So that this one is right knee control, and this one is left knee control. Okay. So, done with the wire controllers. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and come in and put in those IK handles, which you can find under skeleton IK handle. Do make sure that it is a rotate plane solver in the option box. So I'll come back here and say skeleton, create IK handle. And I'm going to make one from the hip to the ankle. And this one will be called ankle IK. And then I'm going to create one from the ankle. See, if you get an error, it's because I was selecting on the IK handle. So you might need to zoom in and click on the outside of the joint and then click in the center. There we go. And this will be ball underscore IK. And then you need to come over here and click. See, I missed again, so I'll make sure I click on the joint and then click on the toe. And this is going to be toe underscore IK. And if you really want to be fancy, you can do them both at the same time, and I probably should have actually called this left ankle A. Left ankle, because there's going to be 2. Oops, left. If you really want to, you could like do them all at once just to get them out of the way. Oop, I messed up. That's not supposed to go to the knee. Because what happens here is that it needs to have a joint in there to bend. See that? Okay, let's go back and go here to here. There we go. And then joint to joint. And joint to joint. This is right toe IK. Right ball IK. And right ankle IK. So the way this is going to work is that all of these are essentially going to be a child of the foot controller, but in a particular order. So if you wanted to, you can go ahead and just make them all be a child of, I'm just holding middle mouse and dragging them to their respective controllers. So when I select the controller, it's going to move the whole leg. Okay. See how that's working? I just hit 5 real quick. Hit undo a little. Hit 4 so we can see. So it will move the whole foot. And it's a great way to test if your knee is bending correctly and things are rotating correctly. So really quickly, that's already functioning very well. But what we're going to do with all these IK handles is kind of create some additional control on the foot. So what we're going to do is be adding some of our own custom attributes to each of these controllers so that we can essentially animate this foot or move this foot in a way that more mimics how people would lift and adjust their own feet in a really simplistic manner. So you can add attributes to your controllers by going to Edit, Add Attribute. And in here, it's asking for, what do you want to name the attribute? Well, I need to peel my heel off the ground. That's really common in walking. Okay. And it's asking for, okay, so do you want it to be heelable? Yes. And you can also say override nice name, and it'll give it a nickname, which is like, I'll just put a space in it. So if you want it to look fancy, you can do that. But the nice name is going to do that for you anyway. And then you're going to ask, okay, well, do you want there to be a minimum and a maximum? Like, do you want it to stop? So you could say minimum of 0 and a maximum of 10, I guess. You could also do 1, you can do 100, you can do 50. I'm just putting in an arbitrary value to say, whenever it's 10, I want it to be the maximum amount that the foot could peel off the ground. And then I'll hit add. And you'll notice now that that attribute is over here on the right. And I could add another one, toe tap, toe tapo. So toe tap could have a negative value because it could be when the toes scrunch in and then also flare back out. So I go 10 to -10 with the default being 0 and default being there's no toe tap. So then I could hit add, or if this is all you wanted to add, you can hit OK, but there's a few more I need to add, like stand tip. And this one will have a value of 0 and 10 and default of 0, and I'll hit add. And then we have heel pivot. I put hell pivot, oops. And this one will have a -10 and a 10 because your heel can go in and it can go out. And I think I'll just stop there and hit OK. So now I have all these attributes, but they're not controlling anything. Okay, so that is how we're going to adjust these here, or we're going to determine how these attributes will get controlled. So first off, I'm going to select both of these. And again, this is only added to this one controller. So I'd have to add the same attributes to my right foot. So for here, I'm going to select my left ball and my toe and then hit Control G to parent them together. And I'm going to call this group the toe tap group. And I'm going to change the pivot point to be at the ball joint. So I'm going to hit Insert or D on my keyboard, then hold V as in violin and middle mouse hold, a lot of holding, and jiggle my mouse over the ball joint, and you'll notice it snaps right there. Then I'll hit Insert again. So now this group, watch what it does when I rotate it, will be like ding, 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 ding. Gonna just tap my toe like I mean it. So there you go. There's one. Now I'm gonna select my ankle IK and just group it to itself. And we're gonna call this peel heel group. Guess what this is gonna do? We're gonna take the pivot point of this one, I'll tap D, and then once again, hold down V as in violin, hold down middle mouse as in the middle mouse button or scroll wheel, and jiggle your mouse over the center of that joint right there, and then hit D again to get out of it. So now when I rotate it, watch what happens. Oh, peeling of the heel. It's magical. Looks great. Make sure you undo and don't type in 0. You must undo here, okay? So that works. So now what? We have peel heel, we have toe tap. What were the others? Stand tip. Okay, yep, we gotta do that. So I'll select both these, group those together, and guess what I'm gonna call this? The stand tip group. Guess what the pivot point's going for this one? Yeah, you guessed it. I'm gonna hit D on my keyboard, hold down V middle mouse, and jiggle. Ta-da! Hit D again, and when I rotate, oh, looking good. Standing on the tip of my toe. And, oh, I put grow. What now? Oh, we have the heel pivot. So we don't really have more things to group together. So I'm just gonna group it to itself. Heel pivot. Group. Okay. And then, again, I'm gonna put that, I usually put it at the ankle. Some people like to put it at the back of the heel here. That's totally okay, but I'm gonna put it at the ankle. So I will tap D and then hold down V as in violin, hold down middle mouse and snap it. I missed. So you gotta be a little careful. And right there. Got it. You gotta be careful because you might, it also will snap to vertexes. So I'll tap D again and rotate, rotate, rotate. All right. So now we have the groups that will give us control over, but these still don't work. They don't have any understanding that you have groups there. So you actually need to create an association between these groups that you've created and the attributes that you created on the controller. So to do that, we're gonna need to go to the animation menu. And then you gotta go to key, set driven key, set. I know, what the heck is set driven key? Well, set driven key looks like this. You have a driver which will be the thing driving the keyframe. And you have the driven, and that is the thing that is getting moved. So in this case, the control is in the wrong spot. It needs to be in the driver because that's where the attributes lie. So I'm going to hit load driver. And then I'm going to put in one of these groups. Let's just start with peel heal into driven. So I'll select the peel heal group and then say load driven. So what I want to have happen is I want the peel heal group to drive the peel heal rotation, or specifically the rotate X, because that is the one that will make the heel peel off the ground. Okay, so the left control's peel heel attribute will drive the rotation, rotate X of the peel heel group that I created. So once you have each of these selected, you have to set the default position or the default key. So I just hit key, and you'll notice now there will be a little bit of a blue keyframe on rotate X indicating that it is being controlled by something else. And then the next thing you do is set what the maximum or minimum value is, or what the maximum or minimum value would look like. So the maximum value for peel heal was 10. So just type that in. And then I'll go back to the peel heal group, and then I'll rotate this to look like what it should look like when it's 10. And you'll notice at a certain point the knee's just going to flip over. So go to the point right before it flips over, and that's probably the maximum value. So it's right around 49.157. Cool. So making sure those are all selected, I'm just going to hit key. And now when I move this, you'll see this attribute is now controlling that rotation. Woot! And I need to do that for each of these other attributes. Whew. Okay, and the other foot. Remember how I said it's going to suck that you got to do both? Yep, this is the suck part. So let's work on toe tap. So the foot is already in there. I'll just click on toe tap, but I don't have the toe tap group in there. So I'll select toe tap group, load driven. So which should I rotate for toe tap group? Well, what do you want it to look like? I want it to rotate this way, like it's tapping its toe. So that is, again, rotate X. So the first thing I need to do is set the default key. So key. So now it has its default key. Now I need to set the maximum and minimum, because there is a minimum here. Remember, I made it -10 to 10. So let's start with -10. What do I want -10 to look like? Well, let's go back to and select that. Let's see. I want it to maybe go up. Let's say that's -10. My foot would never do that, but it could, maybe, if I broke it. So then I'll set key. That's what -10 looks like. Okay, let's go back to the left foot control and let's see if it works. And sure enough, yep, it goes from -10 to 0. It doesn't do anything after 10, so let's set what the 10 value looks like. So I have toe tap set to 10, and then go back to the toe tap group, and I'll rotate it down until I say that's what 10 should look like. And then I'll hit key. So how do I know what these look like? I don't know, I'm guessing. I'm just making the assumption of like, well, if I was an animator going to be using this attribute, I would want to be able to have the ability to rotate it however I want. So I'm just guesstimating what I feel like it should look like. So let's make sure it works. And sure enough, -10, there it goes. All right. 2 more to go for this leg. So let's go down to stand tip, and we need to load in the stand tip group. So I'll say load driven. So which direction is this? Well, let's see. It's like, oh, sure enough, rotate X. Set default key. Go back to the foot control and let's set the maximum value because this one only has 1 of 10. Then go back to the stand tip group and let's rotate it till it's gonna flip over. Boom, right there. And then we'll hit key. So back to stand tip, type in 0. Sure enough, it works. So I have peel heel, toe tap, and stand tip. Now I just need heel pivot, so work on down here. Heel pivot group, let's load you into the driven. And which direction is this? Well, this one's actually going to be rotate Y. So let's select that and select default key. And this one also had a negative value because it can go in. So I'll say negative will be the in direction. Oops, I almost messed up. This is super easy to do, especially for heel pivot. I'm actually rotating the foot controller, not the heel pivot group. There we go. So I'll say that's what -10 looks like, and I'll hit key and type in 0. Perfect. Let's go into 10, select the heel pivot group, and then go that way. Key. Awesome. So that foot is now complete. So all I would need to do is do this foot. So again, edit, add attribute, peel heel, I put peel heel again, 0 into 10, add, stand tip. Oh, no, I want to do toe. I want to do it in the same order. That would be bad otherwise. Not bad, it would just be annoying. -10 to 10. Stand tip. 0 to 10. And heel pivot. -10 to 10. So I got those attributes there. And again, I can do key, set driven key, set. Put the right foot control in here and I'll work on all of this. So I haven't actually done all of this yet. So again, toe and ball group. This is the toe tap. Oh, right toe. I didn't call it that. So I'll call this one right so I don't have two of the same name. Toe tap group. With a pivot point here. So hold down V, middle mouse click. Make sure it's good. Yep. Test it. Perfect. You group to yourself. Right, heel, heel, group. Pivot point located. Same position. Hold down V, middle mouse click or drag. Okay, test it. Looks good. Parent group you two together. This is this right stand tip group. Again with a pivot point over here. Okay. Group you to yourself, and this is the right heel pivot group. And with a pivot point of here. And again, this is a tricky one. I'm gonna double check. Oh, see, I messed up. Get in a little closer. Hold down V, middle mouse. There it goes. Hit D to get out of there. D as in dog, and there we go. Awesome. So all of these, if I was to select this, should work appropriately. So all I need to do is start making those connections. So I can start with the peel heel, low driven, peel heel, right foot, peel heel group, rotate X, set the default key, set it to 10, rotate this right before it flips around, boop, then hit key, type in 0, totally works. Let's do toe tap, low driven, toe tap, rotate X. Let's see, let's set the default key. Nope, toe tap, default key. Then let's set this to -10. And it's going to be rotating it up. Set a key. And let's set this to 10. Rotate it down, set a key. Set it back to 0 and it worked. Awesome. Stand tip group, low driven. Stand tip. And it should also be rotate X. Set the default key. I set it up at the wrong, whatever. It's fine. 10. Rotate it to the right before it flips. Key. Nice. Heel pivot, last one. Let's add that in here. Low driven. And it's going to be rotate Y again. So key. And let's make it be -10. Let's go make sure the group is selected. Rotate it inside. Key. Let's do 10. Uh-oh. Messed it up. Let's see what happened here. Oh, I rotated the other axes on accident. Let's kind of undo that. Okay, let's make this get set. Okay, again, let's only rotate Y and then hit key. Type in 0. Okay, then go to 10. Okay, that worked better. And then rotate it and then hit key. Perfect. Both legs are now rigged. The only other thing I'm going to have to worry about is this knee controller. It's not actually controlling anything. Here's how that's going to work. We're going to select this knee controller and then select this IK handle for the ankle and go to constrain pole vector. Watch what happens. Little line going from there to the controller, but watch whenever I select my foot controller, now bend this or knee a bit. When I select this controller, I can do that. Simple enough, right? I'll do the same thing here. Select the controller first, then the ankle IK handle for this leg, constrain pole vector. There we go. I can select this controller, bend the knee. There we go. So from now on, the only thing you're going to be selecting on this character are the controllers, not the geometry, not the joints, not the IK handles. You've now created controllers that will control everything. The last thing I have, or second to last, is I don't actually have this getting controlled by anything. So I'm going to select this controller, then the hips joint, and I'm going to go to constrain parent. And when I do that, watch what happens. There we go. So now this controller is controlling that joint. So all I'm going to need to do, I should probably save at this point. So I'll do save as. Instead of calling it scale, this will be rig. And now I need to skin it. So I'm going to go back to the rigging set menu and go to skin, bind skin, option box. So I'm going to make sure that I am changing the following settings because the character is segmented and that there's not a continuous skin. I'm just going to skin it to each individual joint. So I'm going to go to selected joints and then select the joint and then the skin. I'm going to hit 5, but now I can't see the joint. So I'm going to turn on this X-ray button or X-ray joints button so I can see through. So I can select the joint, then the skin, and then I'll just hit apply. And when I select my controller, now the main ball will follow it. So I'll select the joint, and then the skin, I'll hit apply. And in places like this, this is still part of the joint, this bone here, so I could select this geometry, then that bone that's connected to that joint and hit apply. Geometry, bone, apply. Bone geometry, apply. But geometry, bone, or either order, doesn't matter. So in this case, this bone is in there, so I'll select it. Geometry, bone, apply. And nothing gets connected to the toe. So now when I lift this leg, it should move accordingly. So the other leg, geometry, bone, apply, geometry, bone, apply. Bone, geometry, apply, just to change it up. Bone, geometry, apply. Geometry, bone, apply. And there we go. So now this character is completely rigged. Minus one additional thing that I just like to add, which is by, so I'm going to say file, save as. Instead of this being rig, I'm going to call it skin. I'm going to go back to my Rig 101 wire controllers, and there's a special, or no, it's under char, it's called transform. Looks like that. I like to put all of my controls underneath this. This is what I call a super mover. If you remember on the ball controller, it had one where it would allow you to move the ball for the last assignment anywhere. So I will size it to be around the character. Maybe move it a little bit more this way, but this is totally fine. I'll freeze transformations and delete history and call this, you can call it root, you can call it super mover. That's what I usually call it. And I put all my controls in here. So I'll select them all and middle mouse drag and drop. So when I want to move my character, oops, it makes it a little bit easier to do so. Right? Scaling it though wouldn't work, but moving it you can now do. Okay. And now this, I would say file, save, scene as. You can call this final rig. Okay. And this is a completed rig. I do like to hide joints and everything else, so that's why this was that way. I like to go to say, don't show joints, don't show IK handles, so that the only thing I can actually select is this. I also will put my geometry on a layer, and I can call this geo, and geo layer, and I will reference it. Just select this button here so until it says R, so that the only thing when I marquee select I'll be able to select is things that will control the character itself. Okay. So tap, PO heal, all of it works. So I'll just save that and overwrite it, and that is the end of this assignment.